Oh, thank you.
Okay. Where were we? Because this part is
I
difficult.
have with this just at the beginning.
With this came up
With this
Lenehan.
Yes, yes.
Yes.
Okay.
325 at the bottom of the page, 2 lines before ending the page. Yes, 325.
Yes.
Okay.
This is the beginning.
Okay. Yes, we were talking about Malachi's Almanac, Las Profecías de Malaquías, you remember?
Yes.
And so,
Yes.
and so this to have 3 things in all, but this a mere fetch without bottom of reason for all crowns and burns, yet sometimes they are found in the right guess with their queer, it is no telling how. So they are talking about this awful things that could happen in the future. Now remember that one of the topics in this chapter is the question of having children. And what Joyce is always in a way mentioning it is this the position of the Catholic Church as having a lot of children. Yes, multiply, this question of multiply, which in fact was, and Malena, perhaps you can check this, which was part of the policy in Ireland. Yes, because they thought that if they had a lot of children, and they were many, they could fight the English domination better. So this was part of this political, let's say, point of view. Yes, Malena, you were going to say something.
Yes, I don't know about that specifically, but I remember you told us that it was like a kind of chauvinist sentiment of going against the English invasion.
Yes, yes. In a way, it was used also as a policy, a state policy, no? And Joyce has this.
May I ask a question?
Yes.
Have children, Joyce?
He only had the daughter, you remember his daughter who died.
Yes, one daughter, yes.
And because he was against this idea of having a lot of children.
Yes.
And this is why in this chapter the topic is discussed, and we must remember that Bloom has only one surviving child, because he had the boy who died, so he only has one girl, the same as
The
Joyce.
problem is that at that time they die a lot of children, a lot.
Yes, of course.
If
But
you have just one, you have the probability that they were dead,
yes,
or ill, or no.
And that is why the comparison with our poor Mrs. Purefoy, the one that, I mean, made Bloom go to the hospital, is that she is having her 9th baby. So
Yes,
poor woman, no?
Well, this is a very Catholic people, no?
Yes, and well, and all the tradition at that time, all of them had a lot. The one who died, Dignam, also had a lot of children. And remember that in a previous chapter, Joyce, through Bloom's voice, criticized this situation of having a lot of children and not having enough food for all of them.
Yes.
Because they were very poor.
Yes.
Okay. So with this came up Lenehan to the feet of the table to say how the letter was in that night's Gazette. The letter, again, I remind you, is the letter about the cows. No? Okay.
Yes.
And he made a show to find it about him. So he tried to look for the letter, for he swore with an oath that he had been at pains about it.
Yeah.
But on Stephen's persuasion, he gave over the search and was bidden to sit near, by which he did mighty brisk. He was a kind of sport gentleman that went for a merry Andrew or honest pickle, and what belonged of women, horseflesh or hot scandal, he had it pat. We already know this Lenehan before, yes? He was always betting on horses, I mean, that's why this description, a sport gentleman, is of course a criticism against him. And remember that Lenehan was one of Joyce's real friends, and a friend of Joyce's who wanted to go out with his girlfriend. So it is evident that Joyce portrays him in a negative way, no, as a kind of punishment. To tell the truth, he was mean in fortunes and for the most part hankered about the coffee houses and low taverns with crimps, ostlers, bookies, Paul's men, runners, flatcaps, waistcoateers, ladies of the baño are prostitutes, and other rogues of the game, or with a chanceable catchpole or a tipstaff, often at nights, till broad day, of whom he picked up between his sack possets and much loose gossip. So Lenehan is described here as, you know, a very negative character. Yes, going out with all the people who are, you know, negative at night and drinking and being with prostitutes and borrowing money, etc. He took his ordinary at Bolingbroke's, and if he had but gotten into him a mess of broken victuals or a platter of tripes with a bear tester in his purse, he could always bring himself off with his tongue. Some randy quip he had from a punk or whatnot that every mother's son of them would burst their sides. He's always asking for things, no? People pay for his drinks, for his food, no? Remember that we met Lenehan at the pub before, yes, at the hotel. The other, Costello, that is, here in this talk, asked what was it, poetry or a tale? Faith, no, he says. Frank, that was his name. It is all about Kerry cows. So the other students there don't know about the letter, and so this Costello thought that perhaps it was a letter about poetry because Stephen wanted this to be published. But of course not, it was the letter about cows that are to be butchered along of the plague. But they can go hang, says he with a wink, for me with their bully beef a pox on it. There's as good fish in this tin as ever came out of it, and very friendly he offered to take of some salty sprats that stood by, which he had eyed wishly in the meantime. So for him, he said, okay, yes, you're lost?
Yes, I'm lost, sorry.
At the end of
don't worry, it
the
says,
page.
No, if Ines can put the
here it says, there's as good
map.
fish.
There is a good fish.
It's in the
I
middle
don't
of the
know.
paragraph.
Yes, I found it.
Okay.
Sorry.
Because he says, I don't care about the cows because we can eat fish. There's good fish here in Ireland. So the the problem is that they need the cows, yes, to sell the cows. And that's why they are important. They if they have this illness, they cannot sell them. So the answer is a ridiculous answer. There's as good fish in this tin, no? So he's ready to eat the sardines, no? That stood by which he had eyed wishly in the meantime and found the place which was indeed the chief design of his embassy, as he was sharp set. More gavashes, says Frank then in the French language, that had been indentured to a brandy shipper that has a wine lodge in Bordeaux, and he spoke French like a gentleman too. So this Lenehan is a very careless person. He doesn't care about the cows. He's only interested in eating without paying and in drinking too. From a child, this Frank had been a donut, yes, so a nobody. That his father, a headborough, who could ill keep him to school to learn his letters. So see how Joyce is punishing Lenehan. Everything that he says is against Lenehan. Now we learn that it was difficult for him to keep school, no? And the use of the gloves, matriculated at the university to study the mechanics. but he took the bit between his teeth like a raw colt and was more familiar with the justiciary and the parish beadle than with his volumes. Yeah, so instead of learning or studying at the university, he was more familiar with the policeman because he was always doing something wrong. One time he would be a play actor, then a saddler or a welsher, then not, would keep him from the bear pit and the cock in Maine. Then he was for the ocean sea, or to hoof it on the roads with the Romany folk. Remember the Romany are the gypsies, no? Kidnapping a squire's heir by favor of moonlight, or faking maid's linen, or choking chicken behind the hedge. So all the things that are connected with Lenehan are now at this point, they are criminal acts, no more
Negative and criminal, yes.
Yes. He had been off as many times as a cat has lives, and back again with naked pockets, as many more to his father, the head borough, who shed a pint of tears as often as he saw him. What, says Mr. Leopold with his hands across. That was earnest to know the drift of it. Will they slaughter all? So Mr. Bloom is, of course, interested in the cows, yes? And he says, okay, are they going to kill all of them? I protest, and again, this takes us to the point of view again, no? This I protest, I saw them, but this day morning going to the Liverpool boat, says he. So now the I is Mr. Bloom. He says that he has seen the cows. I can scarcely believe it so bad, says he. Well, probably this type of illness is not evident in cows. I'm not an expert, but apparently this illness is not something you see. And he had experience of the light brood beasts and of springers, greasy hoggets, and wether wool, having been some years before actually for Mr. Joseph Coffey, a worthy salesmaster that drove his trade for livestock and meadow auctions hard by Mr. Gavin Low's yard in Prussia Street. I question with you there, says he, more like 'tis the hoose or the timber tongue. So they are discussing if these cows can be sold. Mr. Stephen, a little moved, but very handsomely told him no such matter, and that he had dispatches from the emperor's chief tail tickler, thanking him for the hospitality, that was sending over Dr. Rinderpest, the best quoted cow catcher in all Muscovy, with a bolus or two of physic to take the bull by the horns. So Stephen is, playing with Mr. Bloom, no? So he, in a way, he sneers at Bloom, saying, no, I received a letter from the emperor's chief tail ticker, the one who is in charge of the cows, and that they are not going to accept the cows. Come, says Mr. Vincent, a plain dealing. He'll find himself on the horns of a dilemma if he meddles with a bull that's Irish, says he. Now, this is a joke that is connected with the Pope, because a bull is the bull, the animal, and also the bull, las bulas papales. Yes, so the irony here is that they will have a dilemma, they will have a problem if they interfere with a bull that's Irish. Irish by name and Irish by nature, says Mr. Stephen. So Stephen goes on with the joke, yes? And he sent the ale purling about, an Irish bull in an English china shop. So the Irish bull is the bull of the papal bull, la bula papal, in an English china shop. So the English do not follow the Pope, obviously. And so this will be, as we say in Spanish, un elefante en un bazar. See, that is the idea, the same idea. I concede you, says Mr. Dixon. And look at the word he uses, no? The idea is, I understand you, but instead of that, he uses the verb conceive, which is connected with procreation too. It is that same bull that was sent to our island by Farmer Nicholas, the bravest cattle breeder of them all, with an emerald ring in his nose. I sent you all the information about this Nicholas because he accepted the English and he negotiated with the English in the past. Of course, we are talking of the King Henry, to sell the cattle, yes, Irish cattle to England, and he was given as a you know, as a prize, or as a yes, to name him a gentleman, an emerald, a medal with an emerald ring with in the middle. So that emerald pearl, that emerald stone, sorry, is Ireland. Yes, the emerald in the I mean in all the English Empire, represented by an emerald. Yes, the green island. So but this man, this farmer Nicholas, who negotiated with the king, with the English king, had to accept the Protestant religion. So to be accepted by the king, no? True for you, says Mr. Vincent, across the table, and a bullseye into the bargain. You see, a bullseye. We go on with this metaphor of the bull, says he, and a plumper and a portier bull, says he, never shit on Shamrock. So they are angry. They are angry because the idea is that the English are always, look at the word, shitting on Shamrock.
On Shamrock.
Sorry? Shamrock.
Shamrock is also the
symbol of Ireland.
The image of the trébol.
El trébol de Irlanda, claro. So the idea is that they are angry because they think that the English are always shitting on Ireland. And so that's why they are angry at this agreement about the cows in England, because the king had decided that the cows in Ireland, sorry, not in England, in Ireland, belonged to England, right? So he had guns galore, a coat of cloth of gold, and a sweet smoky breath coming out of his nostrils, so that the women of our island, they are talking about this cattle cattle bearer, so that the women of our island, leaving duff balls and rolling pins, followed after him, hanging his bulliness in daisy chains. Yes, so the women of Ireland following this man. What for that, says Mr. Dixon, but before he came over, Farmer Nicholas, that was a eunuch, had him properly gelded by a college of doctors who were no better off than himself. So the discussion is, Ireland is seen here as a prostitute, the women of our island. The idea is that Ireland has been denigrated, yes, has become the prostitute of England. That's why they say that this Mr. Nicholas was a eunuch. He didn't have the balls to face England. Is this more or less clear?
Yes.
So be off now, says he, and do all my cousin German, the Lord Harry, the king, yes, remember that he was called Harry, the Lord Harry tells you, and take a farmer's blessing. And with that, he slapped his posteriors very soundly. So the idea is now, if the cows are ill, give them to the English and take them as a farmer's blessing. And with that, he slapped his posteriors very soundly, no? Se pegó en la cola. But the slap and the blessing stood him, friend, says Mr. Vincent. For to make up, he taught him a trick worth 2 of the others, so that maid, wife, abbess, and widow to this day affirm that they would rather any time of the month whisper in his ear in the dark of a cowhouse, or get a lick on the nape from his long holy tongue, than lie with the finest strapping young ravisher in the 4 fields of all Ireland. So this sentence is also very telling of the feelings they had, yes, because they are saying that all the women in Ireland, maid, wife, abbess is a nun, no, a widow, they prefer to be touched by an Englishman in a cowhouse than lie with the finest strapping young ravisher in the fall fields of all Ireland. So women prefer the English, but not women in the sense of women, but he means that the Ireland has sold itself to England. And now they are like England's prostitutes, no? Another then put in his word, and they dressed him, says he, in a point shift and petticoat with a tippet and girdle and ruffles on his wrist, and clipped his forelock and rubbed him all over with spermaceti oil, and built stables for him at every turn of the road, with a gold manger in each full of the beast hay in the market, so that he could doze and dance to his heart's content. So apparently this Nicholas obtained a lot of presents from the English, because he accepted to, let's say in a way, give Irish cows to England. And so he was given a lot of presents. By this time, the father of the faithful, remember that we are talking the father of the faithful, who could this be? King Henry, because the King of England is the head of the Protestant church, okay? The father of the faithful, for so they called him, was grown so heavy that he could scarce walk to pasture. To remedy which our cozening dames and damsels brought him his father in their April laps, and as soon as his belly was full, he would rear up on his hindquarters to show their ladyships a mystery, and roar and bellow out of him in bull's language, and they all after him. So what will happen with the king? The king, no, the father of the faithful, the head of the Protestant of the English church, will be so big and so important, yes, and his belly will be so full of food that the ladyship, or the girls, would find that they will be all after him in bull's language. Again, this idea of the bull. Yes, the bull is the animal, the bull is the king, and the bull is the papal bull. Says another, and so pampered was he, estaba tan malcriado este rey, so pampered was he, that he would suffer not to grow in all the land but green grass for himself, for that was the only color to his mind. And there was a board put up on a hillock in the middle of the island with a printed notice saying, by the Lord Harry, green is the grass that grows on the ground. So this is, see how it is terrible, no? To think that your own country is somebody else's possession. And so he says that in the middle of the island, there is a notice, by the Lord Harry. Green is the grass that grows on the ground. So the idea is that this is the emerald that the king is obtaining, no? All the island of Ireland. And so, and says Mr. Dixon, if ever he got scent of a cattle raider in Roscommon, or the wilds of Connemara, or a husbandman in Sligo, that was sowing as much as a handful of mustard or a bag of rapeseed, out he'd run amok over half the countryside, rooting up with his horns whatever was planted, and all by Lord Harry's orders. So the king's orders would destroy everything that, let's say, grows in Ireland if that doesn't belong to him. Of course, all this negative feeling about the English is justified, of course, no? Because they were left to die of hunger in the famine. So this is the idea. If there is a handful of mustard or some seeds anything that can grow in Ireland, he will, with his horns, the horns of the king, destroy everything. There was bad blood between them at first, says Mr. Sorry, I have to change the
page.
the page. Can you see this, Vincent? Are you seeing
Yes.
this? Yes, okay. And the Lord Harry called Farmer Nicholas all the old nicks in the world. So the idea is that they are now against all, called Farmer Nicholas. This is the one who brought the king to Ireland, yes, or who gave him the cows, all the old nicks in the world. So he insulted Nicholas with all the nicks, meaning todos los sobrenombres, see, all the nicks in the world. And an old whoremaster that kept 7 trulls in his house, and I'll meddle in his matters, says he. I'll make that animal smell hell, says he, with the help of that good pizzle my father left me. So this, the one who is talking now is Vincent, yes? But one evening, says Mr. Dixon, when the Lord Harry was cleaning his royal pelt to go to dinner after winning a boat race, and this is very funny, no? Because they are going to describe how the king had won a boat race. And he said, he had spade oars for himself, but the first rule of the course was that the others were to row with pitchforks. Do you understand? The king won the competition because he had spade oars, he had oars, but the other competitors had to use pitchforks, tenedores. Entonces, claro, lógicamente el rey iba a ganar porque tenía remos, los otros tenían tenedores. So, he discovered in himself a wonderful likeness to a bull. And on picking up a black thumb chapbook, the chapbook is a book of religion, yes, a Protestant religion, that he kept in the pantry, he found sure enough that he was a left-handed descendant of the famous champion bull of the Romans, Bos Bovum, which is good bog Latin for boss of the show. Bos Bovum is also connected with the Pope. So the story that they are telling says that the King Harry found that he descended also from the Romans, from the Pope. And that is why he decided that he was the head of the English church. After that, says Mr. Vincent, the Lord Harry put his head into a cow's drinking trough in the presence of all his courtiers, and pulling it out again, told them all his new name. So, then, with the water running off him, he got into an old smock and skirt that had belonged to his grandmother and bought a grammar of the bull's language to study. But he could never learn a word of it except the first personal pronoun, which he copied out big and got off by heart. And if ever he went out for a walk, he filled his pockets with chalk to write it upon what took his fancy, the side of a rock or a tea house table or a bale of cotton or a cork float. So again, here the description of the king, feeling that he is a descendant of St. Peter, that he comes directly from St. Peter, that he has a right to be the head of the English church, and that he didn't understand the books because he apparently he's described as if he were very ignorant. This is the description of King Henry for the Irish.
Inés, can you remember the real name of this king?
Henry. This is now they are talking about Henry VIII.
The 8th, the 16th century king.
Claro, claro, es que todo esto pasó en esa época.
I thought it was a criticism of the king in those times, but in those times, who was the king? at the
No.
beginning of the 20th century.
No,
no.
Gabriela, what did you say?
No,
No. In the
no,
beginning.
no, this is Henry Tudor.
Claro, ya estaban los Tudors. No, they are talking about, when they say Harry, they are talking about King Harry. The first Harry is the first Henry, Henry the second, Henry the second. And then this is Henry VIII, the one who decided, well, you know, the one who separated
yes.
from the Catholic Church.
The Reformation. Yes.
Claro.
Absolutely. But I missed up with the current king.
No, nada que ver. No,
Okay.
because what they are saying is that this decision that the cattle, all the cattle in Ireland belonged to the English, was a decision taken by Harry. I mean, that is 15th or 16th century. We have
Okay.
less than a minute, so remember that we meet again at 4:45, okay?
Perfect.
So this is all a description, a very insulting description for the English. And so remember why Joyce's book was not published in Ireland, and it was not published, well, it was published finally in England, but with a lot of problems. Yes, the woman who published the book had a lot of problems in England too, because of these things.